It was always driven into me that no, you are going to go abroad, you are going to make a life there for yourself. You have to establish yourself. You have to be independent financially in all aspects, but financially is the most important thing.
I'm Sonakshi Senthil, co-founder and CEO of YourCue. At YourCue, we make affordable and accessible continuous vital sign monitoring systems.
The pandemic happened, and I faced it from the patient's perspective for the first time when my brother got into a car accident back in India, and they said, can you please fill out forms? There's a person who's bleeding out here, who's been through like trauma, and you want me to fill out forms. You don't have systems linked or something that you can just rush him through the care that he needs.
A lot of people aspire to move to the UK because the whole foundation is so robust and so strong. And of course, I mean, you have to do that legwork. And you have to find your network and your path, but the structure is there. The structure exists.
I always wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. All my life, I've had really supportive people. This is not just my credit or my job. I'm here today. It's because 10 other men and 15 other women in very high positions believed in me, and they kept supporting me through everything. And that's why I think when I went for the startup, I was like, this could be my calling because no one is doing it. Why not me?
Hey, Sonakshi, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Asim.
Well, this is the second time lucky, I guess, because the first time we tried to do the pod, we thought it's virtual, but thank God. In my experience, I think thank God it's in person, because in-person pods do change the whole energy, the vibe, and the conversation. Just, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but it just makes it a little bit better.
No, I think it does to do it.
Okay, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much. Obviously, this is Immigrants Building Companies. So let's just start with talking about your immigrant journey. You are originally from India, I'm guessing.
Yep.
And now you're here.
So I'm from South India originally. I migrated to the UK to do my bachelor's at University of Manchester. I did biotechnology with enterprise. And then I did my master's at University College London with personalized medicine. And right as I graduated, I ended up starting a startup.
Oh, wow. That was quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so just walk me through the journey, by the way. So why the UK? I mean, was it always on the horizon? Was it your family? Was it you? How come the UK versus not staying in India or going to some other country?
So I think my mom always brought me up to be a very strong, independent girl, just given her background and what she's been through in her life. So it was always driven into me that no, you are going to go abroad, you are going to make a life there for yourself. You have to establish yourself, and you have to be independent financially and in all aspects. But financially is the most important thing. So that was driven into me. So I did apply to Canada, UK, and a couple more countries when I was applying for my bachelor's. But it was the UK that came through. So yeah.
So it was the luck of the draw kind of thing?
Yeah, it was just I would say it was just destined to do so. Like, I guess it's just the way things roll. So yeah.
Did you visit the UK before
Nope.
moving? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you come here alone, or were you here with someone?
Had my aunt drop me into University of Manchester because she was a graduate from Manchester and she kind of knew the place. But she just stayed with me for like a week or something. And then I was just told, this is the bus route that you have to take. This is Sainsbury's and Tesco's where you get groceries. This is your apartment, and bye.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
And did you ever live in any other country before this?
No.
Wow. So that
I
must been a big shift.
Yeah, I did a boarding school system. That was the framework that I was in. So we had everything in the school. So it wasn't even like I was day schooling and I was used to moving around a town. So it was a huge change for me to go from there to like shifting into a town and being all independent by myself.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And how did you navigate? I mean, I'm guessing, already you're a founder of a company that's already very lonely. And then you're in a new country. Like so are you because of maybe boarding school, maybe that shift made it easier because you're anyway away from family, or?
So the one thing that I had, and I'm lucky to have, was I always had my brother. He's almost the same age as me. So we graduated together, and then we went into Manchester together. He went to a different uni. And I went into a different uni. So I always had that one support who was, a familiar face, someone to talk to. That was always a constant there. And even when I shifted to London, he was still doing his master's in Manchester and I was in London. So I still had, someone to be there for me. So it wasn't that lonely. Um, I did find it very hard to get a good group of friends. I think I must have shuffled through a lot of people before I sat down to saying, okay, this is my kind of people. Um, Everything else, I think, in terms of settling in, the UK universities have it pretty solid. They support you a lot, irrespective of now having gone through two university systems. For immigrants and people who are international students, the support system is massive. They support you in terms of all your interests and your stay and like all the kind of different resources and even mental health if you need some. So that was very good. That it wasn't like someone just dropped me in the middle of the ocean. I still had a network. It's just I had to go fend and like find where that network is. So yeah.
Yeah, I think same goes for the startup structure or ecosystem as well, and that's why a lot of people aspire to move to the UK because the whole foundation is so robust and so strong. And of course, I mean, you have to do that legwork, and you
Yeah.
have to find your network and
Yeah.
your path, but the structure is there. The structure exists.
Yeah. So even with the startup, we got incubated with University College London as graduates starting the startup. So me and my co-founder were graduates of University College London. And so that made it much smoother starting a startup, knowing where to register the business, what's the kind of legal or accounts or like, all the other aspects of the business that we have to take care of. So we were put in like this boot camp with University College London. They had competitions. We were taught how to pitch and like deliver products. We had media training.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite an intensive program that we had, which kind of gave us that first stepping stone to be like, okay, we got this.
So was that always on the cards? Like, I mean, so it was on strategy. Okay, so come study and then start a business.
No.
Okay.
So all my life, all my decisions that I've made is like, I'm going to try everything and then I'm going to see what comes to me. So even with the colleges, I kind of sprayed it around and I saw which one I was getting accepted into. Um, it was a surprise for me itself because I didn't think that my potential was up there. But with the startup, I was applying for jobs. My co-founder, he was adamant on the startup. He knew for a fact. So whilst I was applying for jobs, he was also convincing me to be like, no, this is it. We've got to do this. But I think for him, the motivation comes from losing his dad. And that's where the startup started and the significance of the startup for him started. We can talk about that later though. But I've always just been like, well, I've got this option to find a job. I'm applying for the startup. Let's see which one comes through. Whichever one comes through at the earliest, I'm going to take that. And I'm going to put all hands on deck on that.
Let's take a pause there, by the way, and maybe a step back.
Yeah.
Because we started this conversation with your mom.
Yeah.
And your mom saying how she wants you to be independent,
Yeah.
specifically financially independent. And I don't think starting a startup is going into the financially independent
Yeah.
route. So how was that dynamics? I mean, did you have a chat with her, or I mean, and not just a chat with her? Like, I mean, I'm just thinking what's going on in your head because your mom, you think about your mom,
Yeah.
and then she's moved you to this country. She wants you to go into a path, and obviously she cares for you, and that's why she's pushing into that one path. And then you're kind of going against all that.
Yeah. You're very right and very perceptive in picking that out because we did have a rough fall through all of that. But so here's the thing, right? Like I've done different jobs and different internships in the healthcare space. And I realized I was very early to realize that if I don't do a job that I'm happy with for the rest of my life between 9 to 9, then I am not going to deliver my 100%. And I've always been someone who's dedicated to their career. So any task, any job that I do, I want to do it with my whole heart. Otherwise, I feel like I'm doing injustice to the other person who's on the receiving end of that task. So, with this startup, I knew my interest was with the healthcare ecosystem, and I always wanted to help people, but I didn't know how, or like how to give back to society. All my life, I've had really supportive people to make sure that I'm standing where I am. This is not just my credit or my job. If I'm here today, it's because 10 other men and 15 other women in very high positions believed in me, and they kept supporting me through everything. So I was quick to realize all of this. And that's why I think when I went for the startup, I was like, this could be my calling because no one is doing it. Why not me? So that was just like a big jump off the cliff that I kind of did, but it worked out. It's all working out.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad because I think a little bit of naivety and delusionality is important also when you're really starting something because it's the unknown.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. And especially if you're starting out, I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of university students. There's a lot of confusion when you're first coming out. There's a lot of competition, and people are trying to get the placements, and people are trying to get those jobs, and there's a lot of risk as well, especially as an immigrant coming to a new country because you spend so much money. Especially as an international student, you're paying so much more money as well, and there's a lot at stake. So I think what people do initially is to de-risk everything. Getting a job obviously is the fastest way to de-risk. But we can debate, what is risky and what is not, getting a job or versus following your path. But I think one of the threads really, it's also interesting, by the way, you said I didn't want to be in a 9 to 9.
Yeah.
You didn't say a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6.
No, 'cause-
That is pretty interesting because already, and also that shows the thought process of you as an individual.
Yeah.
Because a startup is maybe a 9 to 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But I think that is really the start as well. So what I'm trying to come to is, what was the, I know you're talking about passion, but I mean, what was the driver within that passion for you to say, okay, fine, I'm going to do this? Or was it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try it out. If it works, fine. If it's not going to work, then I'm going to go back and try to get a job.
So it was the fact that, well, the pandemic happened, and I faced it from the patient's perspective for the first time when my brother got into a car accident, and I had to rush him through scans. And back in India, this was because I'd gone back home to be with my parents, and they said, "Can you please fill out forms?" And I was just like, there's a person who's bleeding out here who's been through like trauma, and you want me to fill out forms? Like, do you not have systems linked or something that you can just rush him through the care that he needs? And then I kind of started reflecting on it. And I realized that even in the UK, when I had to get my stitches done, emergency care systems in hospitals in the UK currently, they process you based on your severity of the problem, right? Like whoever needs it more, like whoever's bleeding more or whoever's screaming more, they end up rushing them through the process. Is that truly the right way to judge someone's severity of disease? Because someone might still be quiet. They might not be in that much of a pain or screaming, but they might be more in a severe case. So then my thought process was, what is the ideal way to judge a patient? I'm not a doctor by background. I feel like I should give this disclaimer. It's just the way I think things through. It might be right, it might be wrong. But then I realized that vital sign monitoring is something that doctors always use as a reference to judge the patient's condition. Obviously, might not be the case in terms of open wounds and things like that, but that's what it boils down to. And if you have a way of kind of estimating those vital signs on like every aspect of the hospital, then you kind of have a way of segregating patients in terms of who needs it more and who needs it less. And I don't know if this is true for UK healthcare systems, but back in India, they do ward rounds. It's what they call when the doctors go through a shift and the previous shift doctor briefs the next shift doctor on what each patient's gone through in the last couple of hours. And they do it bedwise. Now, I don't think it should be bedwise. It should be depending on who's more severe or complicated in terms of condition, and then come down to the more stable patient. That's how it should be done. So these are little things that I thought could be changed so we could give proactive care rather than reactive care to our patients. So I think it was during COVID that I was like, okay, this space could use some help changing things through. And there are a lot of these systems, I question things a lot. So even when I did my labs in uni, I used to question procedures that were written for hundreds of years long. And they said, well, we don't know why it's happening because this is how we've done it for like 50 years now. So we just continue doing it that way. But I'm like, yeah, but what if you can make things better? So it was all these little instances that now when I look back, I think it kind of accumulated to, okay, this is how hospitals have been functioning. Doesn't mean it still has to continue to do so. There are some things that we can change. And if we could change and we could progress further. And COVID was a good example of that because every system was able to transition into digital support or digital care. The healthcare struggled because there was still a part of it that where we needed people to actually come and do things. And by that I mean, so a nurse it still traditionally pulls down the vital sign monitors. They cuff you up with a blood pressure cuff. They have the pulse oximeter. They have a thermometer, and they try to get all your vital signs and they input it into a system, or then they have it logging into a sheet. Um, you could do it automatically. You could have one device that collects it all automatically, medical grade, of course, and then you could have it continuously uploading. So you save that nurse so much time that now they're not stressed to do that. They can free themselves up to do truly like give patient care in the true sense. So like, look after them and give them the talk or have that space to even give that conversation of 2 minutes to that patient who would need it. Yeah, so I think these were the little kind of things that kind of accumulated me to being like, you know what, no one's doing it. You should do it.
This is super interesting, by the way, and we're gonna,
Yeah.
dig deeper. But the emergency example that you gave, where somebody's screaming the most or whatever. And again, I'm also not a doctor by trade.
Yeah.
It's just we're having a conversation. So my father, this was I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe about 10 years ago. My father was visiting his sister at the time in an emergency, and he was just sitting casual in the emergency, and then he just collapsed. He collapsed and his heart stopped. So he had a heart attack. And again, he wasn't screaming. He was just sitting there. He was not even a patient. He didn't even come into emergency because he was a patient. He was just visiting his sister.
Sorry.
What I'm trying to say is, oh no, it's okay. I mean, he's fine now. He's fine. He got treated, so he's okay. But it's so true. It is one of those. So if he was a patient, if he just came in because he's feeling a little bit of pain, he wasn't in a condition where he was screaming and he was, oh my God, like people thought his heart is gonna stop. So definitely a lot of relatability from my perspective, but it also, I mean, now if you apply logic, like it logically makes sense. And we've all been into emergencies and we know how the system works. It is, I don't know if it's just the UK, but in general, I mean, that would be, again, maybe it's just common sense. If somebody looks that much more desperate, bring them in first.
Yeah. Yep. You're completely right in thinking that. And I wouldn't blame the healthcare systems on this because they themselves are overstretched. Like in developing countries, the doctor to patient ratio is crazy. Like at least in India, it's like one doctor has to see hundreds of patients through the day. So they don't have an option or they don't have resources out there that they can utilize to lessen the burden on them. I think that's the main thing that we're trying to battle with setting up YourCue.
So, okay, now already starting a business is very difficult. There's a B2C space, there's a B2B space, and then now you're moving into government level, NHS or hospitals in India, just
Yeah.
hospitals in general. I mean, that's a very tough space.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the importance and the need of it. But then, I mean, it's already because, okay, so we're in the mental health space, and we tried to also look at the NHS initially when we first started, but it was very tough. It was very tough to crack the system, and we just decided to move into the B2B space rather than getting into the NHS. And COVID, obviously, for us also was our silver lining, because the mental health space, as we both know, the demand and the conversation around mental health that just exploded since COVID. But even then, it was very difficult for us to crack that code. Maybe we should have, I don't know, tried harder, but it was very difficult. So, I mean, walk me through that before we get a little bit more. Is it because people just understood the space, and because I don't think it's that easy,
I think a large part of people, and this means anyone who's not in the space of healthcare, they kind of have an idea of healthcare systems as they show in the movies. And it's not completely true at all. So we had to re-strategize and strategize all over again. I think as a startup, you keep doing it till the end. But so we had this initial idea that we want to automate patient monitoring, right? We started off with the device called Water. We built all the sensors. We made it really small. We found really supportive people who we have on board as advisors right now to help us through that process. Because me and my co-founder, Dr. Nikit, he's medical by background, and I'm coming from the patient care, personalized medicine, entrepreneurial background. So we need the engineers. So we needed someone to take that heavy lifting for us. So we have our advisor now who's turned into a CTO for us, who's taking that heavy lifting on making the device. So we started out with Ward Alert. We then came up with the idea of people having out of hospital cardiac arrests, and how a device like this, with different sensors placed in it, could have different use case scenarios. So then now we had this one version of I want to call it the alpha version of the device. But if I change or modulate the sensors in the device, then it becomes for different use case scenarios.
Oh, nice.
So it's like a big Lego box or Lego puzzle that I've made. But if I start changing the Lego pieces, then I can turn it down into different things. Yeah, I hope I.
Wow, yeah, no. I mean, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also thinking the thought process behind it, because, okay, we're in SaaS, so I mean, modular approach is not only beneficial but absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Because not every business, in our case, needs everything that you have, so they should be able to pick and choose what they really need, and that is super important. And that's what you're also talking about. So, I mean, how were you able to articulate that to these hospitals?
So different hospitals need different use cases, right? So now let's take a pediatric hospital is not gonna be interested in a device that we are making for the generic public. They want devices for babies. And now we are only focusing on selling to developing countries like India, Africa, because that is the system that we are at par with to kind of deploy our systems in place. We don't have the tech that we need to deploy it in an already existing hospital with an EHR system and an API being called out to maneuver the logistics of that. So what we're trying to do is make a very simple version of the device that we have. I feel like I should walk you through the.
Please do.
Yeah. So Ward Alert, we started off with having sensors for heart rate, blood oxygen, skin temperature, and blood pressure trends. We were then very quick to realize that blood pressure trends still needs some configuration to do on our end. But if we lose the blood pressure trends, we have heart rate, blood oxygen, and skin temperature that's ready to go. And that's all the vitals that a baby needs to get monitored in an ICU. And babies, they're very fragile as soon as they're born. They're not the kind of babies that like this was eye-opening to me when I saw them in the ICU bed compared to what I see, like, those 2-month-old babies that are all chubby and they're like nice and they're happy. That's not what you see in the ICU. They're very tiny, they're very fragile. It's really a sad state to see them in. Um, and they have wired sensors that's being taped on their feet or arms, and that wired sensor sometimes also give babies a rash or a heat burn on the skin because their skin is super delicate. Now we have B2C products for it, but we don't have a device for those little ones with the little digits, because also their hands are like the size of my finger, right? So like anything that fits on my finger would fit on their arm or their ankle. So we don't have any devices that are made specifically for babies for hospitals. The B2C ones are priced at like 300 pounds and 400 pounds. And they don't term themselves as medical grade because they don't want to take the liability of it. So they say, parents, you can use this as long as it's under your supervision. Now, we are making devices that is made for hospitals and for doctors to interpret that data. And that's the device that we're focusing at building right now. Meanwhile, we were also able to realize that in the UK, 36,000 individuals at least have cardiac arrest outside a hospital.
Wow.
And more than half of them go undiscovered. So if you're lucky and if you're in the right place at the right time, you will have people around you to be like, oh no, he's collapsed, he needs help or she needs help. If you don't have that, let's say you're taking a bath with closed doors, you're just going to be there for hours before someone discovers you. And every minute that you go without CPR, it loses your chances of survival by 7 to 10%.
Wow.
So then we realized that if we start using the heart rate sensor and then taking the raw data from it and writing algorithms to detect cardiac anomalies, so it could be arrhythmias, it could be strokes, it could be cardiac arrest. But if we're able to do that with in combination with other sensors like blood oxygen, skin temperature, have a eSIM and GPS capability in the device, then the device can send for help when it realizes that you've had something going wrong with you. So we have an emergency pathway that we have structured for that. That is the device that's called Heart Alert, and it was funded last year by Innovate UK. We got a grant for it. So that is the kind of technology that the UK healthcare system is ready for because we have our emergency activation pathways in place. If someone was to call 999, it gets redirected and the ambulance comes and reaches you in time. Developing countries, on the other hand, don't have that. So we're trying to make a version of the device that could be possible to deploy for different places depending on the use case scenarios.
Okay. I'm actually very interested on the cardiac side of things because I did mention to you before the pod because I have gone through, like I had an angina attack just I think about almost three months ago.
Okay.
I believe I was fortunate that, I mean, I've got 2 stents now, but I believe I was fortunate that I went through the system in time, but I was also in a place where I was thinking twice, maybe not to go ahead with the tests and whatever, because I had that angina attack and then I just felt fine after that, you know? So I think that's quite interesting. And I'm also now, because of that's my lived experience, I'm also researching and I'm looking at the mortality rate and how stressors are a big part of that as well, as we all know, and how it's also affecting the younger generation more than just back in the days as we know it, that or just the older people were getting affected with any cardiac type of events. But before I come to that, I'm also thinking, when you first start a business, especially in the initial days, focus is very important.
Yep.
And I'm thinking it's already a very complex type of space that you've gotten. And then your buyer is also, again, not the easiest because you're speaking to governments or you're speaking to hospitals and so on. So, and then you're talking about different countries as well. So you're talking about developing countries like India and Africa, and then you're talking about the UK. Like it just feels like, wow, there's a lot going on, So where you're at with your team, and do you guys think it's a lot going on, or again, was it strategy? Was it by design, or?
I think once we were able to realize that a device of this nature has this kind of potential, It was now about to put a plan in action, saying, look, this is where we're going to focus first. This is what we're going to roll out. And then these other steps are going to follow as they are written down. The way we came up with that is, okay, look, we don't need millions of pounds to make devices like this. If we make them in developing countries like India, it could be much lesser. And so I know you kept saying that hospitals are a difficult sell. Um, that might be true for the developed countries because they have a system in place. That's not true for developing nations. In developing nations, in smaller private hospitals, which are like, let's say India has like 70,000 hospitals.
Wow.
43,000 of them are small private hospitals. So they have like 30 beds in a hospital, and the doctor is the owner of the hospital.
Okay.
So when the doctor realizes, okay, this could be used in my hospital and I see the benefits of it, the sales cycle is much smaller. It's not like where you go to a big private chain hospital and then you're trying to get in touch with the CFO to authorize the sales cycle, and then you start with your procurement cycle. Like, it's a huge process in those big hospitals, but what we're targeting are the small ones. And I think large part of this decision was run because as a startup, it's very hard to raise funds, especially as an immigrant female founder. Um, so what we've done is the quicker the startup can go into making revenue,
Yes.
the quicker we can recycle that revenue whilst raising funds for the other products as well. So yes, in the sense that you ask if we're spread out, I don't think we're spread out because we have a team of 4 now who are working with, I would say 2 are working full time. The other 2 are still working full time, but they're not being compensated for their work. So they're really nice people to be working with.
This is a proper startup.
Yeah. So we have 4 people working on it. And the thing is, we kind of strategized it in terms of needs, right? Like what is the life cycle of the startup? What are we trying to change? And how can we ensure we actually deliver that to the patient without upsetting or looking like we need to make sure that the startup looks good,
Yes.
right? Any good performing startup will then be able to raise more funds into the business. So having those 2 priorities set, we then started saying, okay, we're going to first launch NeoAlert, which is, by the way, 6 months away from launch. We're just raising a round of 500,000 pounds to get it through the regulatory, file patents, and have it deployed into the market. It's already gone through clinical validation, like soft testing, and it's at par with ICU systems. So we're confident that we'll get the regulatory approval that we need. So we started with NeoAlert. Then we add on 2-3 sensors and algorithms onto it, and then the ward alert becomes complete. So whilst NeoAlert is selling in a developing nation, we can also push NeoAlert for clinical trials with NHS, use the developing countries' data to present to the NHS and say, look, we've been working for a year, we've been selling for a year, this is the impact that we have created. We think you can use this device as well. And then that makes it so much easier for the NHS or like any other developed nation to take that in. We're like, okay, this is trial tested. This is working fine. They've already impacted so many lives. So why not in our country, right? So it's kind of just fine talking the language that everybody talks. So that's what we do. But at the same time, we realize that Heart Alert could be a device that could be, if it gets the right support, we could go for it and solely for it. So we do write grants for Heart Alert to see, to just check what the interest from the government is like. And they're very interested in a device like that because at least overall in the UK, we've got defibs on most places. It depends on the council if they can have that budget allocation to set up a defib for the locality that they're in. And that's why some localities seem to have it more than other localities. But at least in the UK, heart attack is a huge, like cardiac arrest, heart attack, both are a huge problem. Um, we recently visited sudden cardiac arrest, the charity that they had come for like an emergency fair, and they had more than 3,000 members who go through cardiac arrest only. That's only
Wow.
the segment of people who've experienced a cardiac arrest and who are like living their lives with changes so that they don't get another one. I haven't even covered heart attack yet. So the population of affected people is a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I feel you guys are doing a lot, but it's also, I mean, it does sound very thought through. And like, again, when you're looking at investments or you're looking at, I mean, you're talking about traction and revenue so that the business looks good, so that it's much more investable business. All that makes sense 100%. I think, I mean, starting any business is very difficult. Obviously, what you guys are doing is also very difficult. I appreciate that you guys are 4 full-time people, but it's a lot of work that
Yeah.
these 4 full-time people are also doing. From a revenue standpoint, with the developing countries, you guys are already revenue, not pre-revenue.
No, we are still
Still
pre-revenue.
pre-revenue,
We're 6 months into getting into the revenue stage.
Okay. And that is why now you're aligning that with then the patent and the not the productization,
Yeah.
but also the investment round coming
Yeah.
into.
So we've already started securing letters of intent. And just I to give the viewers a little bit more clarity, back in India, you know how we can see off licenses from street to street here?
Yes.
That's the proximity of hospitals in India. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's more like the sales cycle is literally like I go into one hospital, I step out, I see 2, 3 next to me, I go and I talk to all of them. So in less than a week, we were able to get around 9 hospitals interested for the pediatric device, and that's like 50 devices pre-ordered.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in less than a week.
So still pre-revenue and not hitting revenue is because you guys just started this sales cycle, or is because you're waiting for pre-order and then you're going to manufacture and then you're going to supply?
So it's because we're waiting for money. So we need a fundraise to get the device, the CE mark or the ISO equivalent. And then it becomes a truly medical grade device. It is medical grade right now, but it needs the authorities.
Sure. The
to
stamp of
stamp off it.
approval,
Exactly.
basically. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we're raising for, and that's what we're waiting for.
Got it. So coming to because this is obviously, like I said, I mean, I have a personal interest in the
Yeah.
cardiac side of things,
Yeah.
but it's also very interesting because I can already maybe, I don't know if you guys are thinking about it, but already maybe a B2C play here as well. So if you just walk me through, so what is the vision? Okay, so now this sensor is monitoring me day in, day out, like nonstop, and if something goes wrong, bam, it just alert the authorities. But then it's super interesting because that same data could be passed on to your Apple Watch, it could be passed on to your Whoop, and then it's telling me how to, again, not from a reactive but a proactive type of element. It could just help me live a better life and avoid that ever happening as well. Is that what you guys are also thinking about?
Yes, definitely yes. The kind of plan that we have for that is, like you mentioned, we get questioned this a lot. Like, so how are you different from Apple? How are you different from the Aura rings that are out there, right? Let me put it this way. When we have Apple and Aura to monitor ourselves. When we fall sick though, and we visit a doctor, the doctor still uses the traditional thermometer. He still uses the pulse oximeter on your finger, and he still uses the blood pressure cuff. So we are now trying to change the wired, bulky ICU monitors. So hopefully by the time we have deployed Heart Alert, we're already making revenue from hospitals. So that's the kind of an angle that we're coming to. That this is a purely medical grade device made for doctors to read your data. The Heart Alert also has a miniaturized version of an ECG. So we have a prototype made with the Innovate UK grant that we got last year. We faced a couple of problems. One is when we tested Vodafone and O2's network in and around London, in around zones 1 and 2. They are not at the capacity that they need to be to send immediate help.
Wow.
Especially when we don't tap into what we normally use on phones. We have our own structured internet, right? So those systems are not at par. So we are working with Vodafone now to tell them, like, look, we did this testing. We went underground, we came overground, and it takes about 5 minutes time for us to connect to your cellular towers to give us a GPS location. And we can't afford 5 minutes because every minute without CPR reduces your percentage by 7 to 10% of survival, right? So every minute counts. So we need that to be much better before we deploy it. So whilst the company itself is focusing on miniaturizing the sensors and making it small and a medical grade device at that, we are also working with network providers. We're working with computer dispatch systems. So it's a computer dispatch system that gets the 999 call and then triggers an alert to the nearby ambulance trust to say, this is the location, can you dispatch one? So it's the computer dispatch system that needs to authenticate the alerts. And by large, 999 is still a phone-based system that we are trying to convert it into an automated system, right? Because if this device detects an ECG, you know it's a YourCue device detecting an anomaly in an ECG. You know it's a YourCue device, it's validated. You know that the person needs help, it's validated. There's no need to say...
So bypass the whole...
Yeah, there's no need to say, hello, 999.
Gotcha.
There's something, because who's going to say that when we are collapsed, right? We don't have anyone to do it. The whole point is we don't have witnesses around us. So the way the heart alert works is we sell it to a B2C person. They wear it on themselves. At the minute, we have it as intermittent ECG. I feel like if I throw jargon at you, just let me know when to like...
Please explain.
Okay. ECG is, you got 12 lead ECG on you.
Yes.
Okay, you know that. Okay. So ECG is something that always is measured. The electric current is measured across your heart. So it needs to come from two different points of the body. So it has to be something that like two extremities touch, either your right leg, left leg, or right hand, something. So we have it right now as intermittent ECG. So only when I touch my wearable, the loop is completed for it to have an ECG reading. We don't have a continuous ECG yet, but we have ideas to get a continuous ECG later on. The way it works right now is we take the heart rate is done through photosensors, and it has a graph called photoplatismograph, where you can see, like the ECG, when the heart is pumping, when it's contracting, how much blood volume is being pushed in. So we're using a comparative analysis of PPG and ECG to kind of identify any cardiac anomalies. If we identify one, the device is going to trigger an ECG reading for the user to take, so it vibrates. If there is no ECG taken, we know that just with PPG that something's wrong with that person. So we call you up saying, we're trying to take an ECG for you. Can you do it? Is everything okay? If you don't respond, we call your registered friends and family, whoever's around you, to say, is everything okay with that person? Can you go check in on them? We're trying to take an ECG. We can't take an ECG. And if they come back with an unsatisfactory response as well, we know we can dispatch an ambulance.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. This is with the current kind of technology that we have in space. The vision would be, let's say if we have our network systems running amazingly, we are able to do the continuous ECG, then we know for a fact with the data that we have, something's wrong or not. So we can bypass even calling your friends and family to sending a direct validated alert. We have these kind of safety checks in place so that we don't then create another problem for the computer dispatch systems and the emergency services, taking resources away from someone who truly needs it by creating false alarms. So with the stage that we're at in the world right now in terms of technology, this is the way that's best to be like used for getting the help that someone would need. Because when they don't have help for 2 hours, if they get help in 5 minutes, it's still progress.
Wow. This is just amazing.
Thank you.
But most of the times I'm not speechless, but I'm just registering everything that you're also saying.
No,
Obviously, this is like there's a personal connect to it, but it's also very exciting. Like everything that you're talking about. Obviously, I mean, there's a great opportunity in terms of helping people and saving lives, but also from a tech perspective, it's also very exciting. Like, oh wow, like where we're going and where we're heading. But again, coming back from a tech perspective, do you feel that you're able to have all these conversations because in the last 2 years, maybe the technological advances in the AI and the changes has brought us that much closer, or it has not really affected your space and everything that you're talking about now?
So AI for us with YourCue has changed the rate at which we progress. By far, we are progressing exponentially. So without AI, it would take us two full-time engineers, like
Yeah.
software coders, to write the algorithms, to build an app, to make the dashboard and everything. It took us 2 months with very minimal fees from the grant to have a full cloud dashboard with really good subcontractors, obviously, to have that in place. It scales us up much quicker in terms of what we can build and display to investors or customers as an MVP, because AI does most of the heavy lifting, right? These days, I think in Google, if you write a sentence, they make the whole app for you as per need.
Yeah.
So that's how it's helped us out. In terms of the tech, um, in the medical device sector, it's like people try make apps, but you can't have apps if you don't have a phone. So a large part of the healthcare system is still manually collecting vital signs. And what we're trying to do is make a device to automate that. Once that device exists, then the amount of algorithms or readings or data analysis that you can perform is limitless. And the thing is, we at this moment in time, we don't have the data that we need from like different parts, because a large part of that is not there when you collect it manually. We don't have a system to record it. It's manually there for the time that the patient is admitted, it's then gone. With this, we would have historical data. With a system like what YourCue is building, we would be able to later go into a future where we say, okay, this patient, this disease profile, these complexities, similar patient has come now. We know the trajectory that we're going to
Gotcha.
follow. So we can then give more preventative care, and the doctors are much well assisted. Like, we're not trying to replace doctors, no. We're not trying to replace nurses, no. We're trying to aid them better for the growing population that they have to like help make sure that they give their full care to every single patient, and they come out feeling satisfied. Because I hear stories again, time and time again, from my co-founder who's a doctor. The disappointment he feels every time a patient did not get through is crazy. Like, it's massive, and it takes a mental toll on you. It makes you a little bit insensitive to things like life and death when you work in that space as a doctor. So what we're trying to do is give them that peace of mind and say, okay, look, we got some things covered for you. We have your tools. You can use this to give the full care that you need, because I think doctors have taken a very big oath in making sure that somebody else lives, right? That's a big task. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a big task, but I mean, you guys have also taken a big task. I mean, to hopefully support and aid all these doctors and nurses. I mean, because it's it is absolutely stressful. I mean, their job is like, I know a lot of people in the UK also talk about the NHS and how it's failing and whatever. But wow, when I'm in the NHS and I see these doctors and the nurses in and out, and they have this big smile on their faces, I'm just like, wow, like I couldn't do that job. Like, it's so stressful.
Yeah.
It's so like people are just doing the best that they can, which is just amazing to see.
Yeah.
And any help is amazing, but I mean, what you're talking about is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Talking about the future, just in general, you've touched a little bit about the future where things could go and progress, and there are, I mean, contingencies to the network providers and all these other aspects. But if you were to structure or have like a if like a structured vision for the next 3 years for your company, where is that?
I think once we start automating continuous vital sign monitoring, that's what we're focusing on in the next 3 years at least. Um, yeah, that's the goal, to replace wired and manual way of collecting vital sign data and have those old bulky instruments to something that's small, something that can be used, reusable for everyone, doesn't cost a lot. Everyone gets that right to healthcare that they need. It's called quality healthcare. Everyone has the right to healthcare, but not everyone has the right to quality healthcare. So that's the goal for the next 3 years.
I love that. And the focus is going to be the UK?
Focus is going to be in developing nations.
Okay.
The U I wouldn't just put like a umbrella on it and just say it one nation, because once we have one developing place interested in it, we can use that for the developed nations as well. It's just they are very cautious, and they're very hard on the safety measures for the patients, which they have to be. That makes it a harder market, but it's not doable. It's doable. You just need some time for it. That's it.
And we need people like you who have that thought process to say to say exactly what you just said as well. It is doable, but then the hard work needs to come in,
Yeah.
and then the patience is also important. Coming back to your mother.
Yeah.
What does your mother think of you now?
So we had a little bit of time where I wasn't talking to my parents for 3 years in between all of this.
Wow.
Yeah, because they didn't agree with the choices that I made in life. But naturally, right? Because like you put it through, she's always rooted for something, and then I just went like all things in the air. This is what I'm doing, and nobody's gonna ask me. So I think the fact that I was left alone for those 3 years by myself was the moment where I realized, okay, this has to make it. And I'm a little bit stubborn that way. Like once I make my mind, it's done. It has to go that way, irrespective of what. So that really pushed me through. And I had that moment earlier this year when I reconnected with them and told them like, look, this is everything that I've done. These are my accomplishments. I've been named top 100 in UK tech in Asians field in the UK. And then she just went like, oh, first of all, this is amazing what you've told me. But this also sounds like some mammoth of a task that you've taken on yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but it's one that I like doing. And she's like, okay, if this keeps you happy, then that's fine, because you've shown me now that you can do this yourself. You are still financially independent in your own sense. You still make things work somehow. And that's good enough for me. And I'm like, okay. So yeah,
Oh, I like that.
she's proud now.
Oh, I love that. Good for you. And good for her as well.
Yeah.
Coming back to where your journey started, even before you were applying for all these universities, and I don't know if you ever thought you'd be sitting in this pod talking about all these other things, but it's great what you've achieved, and I think you're doing a phenomenal job. It'll be super amazing to speak to you in the next 3 years, to see what impact you've made in the world, because I'm sure you are going to go out there and create a lot of impact.
Thanks,
Wish you all the
Asim.
best. But coming back to that young girl, what would you say that young Sonakshi today?
I would tell her just have faith, have trust in the process. Like I think as a young girl, I was more doubtful on, oh, but how's this gonna work out and how's that gonna work out, and I don't know any of this. But having lived through that, I just kind of starting to realize that when, like, if it's meant for you, it's yours. There's no stopping it. And if it's not meant for you, the smallest thing and to the largest thing will make sure that you don't reach there, like you've got no control about it. Yes, you've got control on your choices that you make, but have a little bit trust in the process that, everything's going to work out for everyone in their own sense the way it should. And they'd all be happy with that. It's just your outlook on life.
I love that. And I have a similar outlook. I've always said when you do things with the right intent,
Yeah.
you do attract the right circumstances and the right people.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you have that intent. And I'm glad that your co-founder and the other two people with you also have the same intent, because this is going to change a lot of lives.
I was so I think the most surprising part was I was like, oh, it's a mean world out there and I don't think I'll find the right people. But the more I find the right people, it blows my mind every time. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. This is a nice person to be around with. So yeah.
Yeah, and people generally are good and they want to help, for the most part, like really. And especially when you ask for help, you'll be so surprised that there's so many people at the system, especially if you're in a developed country like the UK. There's so much support system around you. Like, I mean, I think it's our own it's our own I don't know, facade that they put that we ourselves put in front of us. But once you take that first step. The second step becomes easier. The third step becomes easier, and so on. I'm glad you and your co-founder have taken that step.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking back to like when you put it that way, a lot of our viewers are going to be like, yeah, but they've been through that. So, it's easier for them to say, but it's actually difficult to listen to that. But I don't know how else to tell them that, no, this is how it is. Like, because I have listened to my mentors and different panelists say the same thing. And I've listened to people even say, like, right now, because we're working with the fundraise, they're like, the right moment, the right investor will come. I'm like, that's easy for you to say, but I don't know how else to convey it other than the way you just did.
Yeah, because I mean, and the other thing that anybody listening as well who've not started their journey until now, you might think, so let's say we're two different stages. Maybe I'm at A, maybe a few years ahead of you. You're maybe a few years behind of me. Then maybe some other people are a few years behind. But the reality is we're all just winging it.
Yeah.
Like, I also don't know what the hell is happening in life. I'm just taking that one step and that one step and that one step, and you're doing the same.
Yeah.
So I think that is also very important for people to know. If you really have that strong desire, just take that first step.
Yep.
Because it's that action which changes everything. I mean, we just sit and procrastinate and we put all these hurdles ourselves in front of us. So I think doing that is super important.
I think a lot of the problems that we have just happens in our head. Like, we create the problems for us.
That is not just business. I think that is just life.
In general, yeah.
No, but Sonakshi, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the pod. This was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
Like, you are a very smart cookie, and I'm glad that you're here trying to solve this problem with your co-founder and the rest of your team. And I mean, I'm just excited to see what you guys create.
Yeah.
I have a personal connect with the heart monitoring device, so I can't wait for that to go into market. And I will be your customer, this is for sure. But I wish you all the best. And yeah, I can't wait to bring you back on the pod and see what you've achieved and how much impact and value you're creating to the world.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you, Asim. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.